12 months on Mounjaro. Let's talk about it. Hi guys, thanks for joining me here today. So yeah, it's been 12 months. In fact, it's been 14 months this month that I've been on Mounjaro. So in this video, we're going to talk about it and I'm going to give you a bit of an update because I have had an update from my medical team, and I'm going to share with you my results and let you know where I'm going from here on Mounjaro. So stay with me. So let me give you a bit of a backstory. So back in October last year, I had a conversation with my diabetic team as to whether Mounjaro was right for me, and I sort of ummed and ahed about it. But then when I thought about the risks of uncontrolled diabetes, I was like, give it to me now. I'm taking it. But I did kind of like struggle with whether or not it was for me because there was just so much negative out there, a lot being said, and yeah, and I was like, oh, I don't know. But then when I weighed it up and I thought, you know what, when you have health challenges and like me, multiple health challenges, and you're trying to keep everything in balance, and then on top of that, you're type 2 diabetic and the risks that are linked with type 2 diabetes, it was a risk I wasn't prepared to take. I wasn't prepared to, play around with it because, type 2 diabetes runs in our family. My dad's cousin lost a leg in his youth due to uncontrolled diabetes, and my grandmother had type 2 diabetes. Well, lots of aunts and uncles and cousins have type 2 diabetes. My mother also had type 2 diabetes, and my dad, he died of type 2 diabetes complications. So some really serious, health related issues. Plus, my dad also suffered strokes as well due to uncontrolled diabetes. So when, they talked to me about it and said, you know what, it can really significantly reduce these risks, but also get your type 2 diabetes in control. Ummed about it, and then I thought, you know what, sign me up. So I started on it and had really steady weight loss. I should just say that prior to starting on Mounjaro, I'd lost 9 stone. First with Weight Watchers, and I sort of yo-yoed up and down, and then put Weight Watchers to one side, and I just started going back to just sensible eating, 2 or 3 meals a day, reducing a lot of the high ultra processed foods, and moving my body as often as I can, and then doing intermittent fasting and mindful eating. And with that, just a very sensible approach, I found that it was really doable for me. Now that works for me, doesn't work for everybody, because some people do like the structure of a slimming program like Weight Watchers or Slimming World. They like the structure of counting calories or points or sins. We find our jam. But those things didn't work for me. I couldn't get on with them. What worked for me was just going back to basics and saying, I'm just going to eat, healthy, regular meals, small portions, and in a eating window. Just kept it really simple. So in total, I lost 9 stone, and then although I'd lost that, my diabetes was still uncontrolled. So that's when the decision was made to start on Mounjaro. So my Mounjaro has been funded by the NHS because I get it on prescription, and I know that that's not the case for a lot of people, and even people who are type 2 diabetic can't get it on prescription because you do have to meet a set criteria. And I think now with the cost of Mounjaro increasing, that criteria is being strengthened and even increasing. So I was very, very blessed to be able to have the opportunity to be on Mounjaro. So right from the off, I remember my first week on Mounjaro, I think I lost 4.5 pounds. Started like everybody on 2.5 milligrams, and I did that for a month, and then I stepped up to 5 milligrams, and I did 5 milligrams for quite a few months, and my weight was coming off really steadily. And then I hit a blip in the road, and I kind of plateaued a little bit, and was of the mindset Mounjaro is not working for me. So I asked my doctor if I could increase to 7.5. Well, actually, it's not the doctor, it's the pharmacist, because in my surgery, you know, the pharmacist, anything to do with medication, you go through to the pharmacist, and the pharmacist has a conversation with you, almost like a consultation. So I just did have to give him a bit of, the hard sell, and he was like, okay, we'll try you on 7.5. And what I realised was that it wasn't the 7.5, it wasn't the 5, it was me. It was me. And what I'd realised was I'd become a bit complacent, and I was just eating that little bit more, eating those extra calories, I still couldn't have huge portions because Mounjaro just reduces the appetite. But what I was having was I was snacking in between, because if I have like a healthy dinner, so eat like a sensible dinner, say like some protein, say chicken with some veggies, maybe a couple of potatoes, I could only eat a tiny portion because I was now full. But what I discovered was that I could eat those slider foods. I could slide down really easily biscuits and sweets and chocolates and cookies, all of those ultra processed, high processed foods. Oh, and the crisps, don't forget the crisps. I could slide down all of those foods, no problem. And that's where I started to plateau. It wasn't about the Mounjaro. It wasn't about the meals. It was all the habits that was making me eat in between those meals. And when it dawned on me, because I'm a reflector, I will stop and think about things. And when I stopped and reflect, I realised that's what it is. And I realised that there's nothing, Mounjaro restricts the appetite. It works on the hormones, the gut hormones. It works on that so that you don't feel hungry. And then when you do eat, you can only eat a small amount. But if you've got a habit like I had of eating sweets and toffees, those are just going to slide through the stomach easily. And that's where I was, not losing. And the reason being, when you eat, say, like protein or fibre-rich foods, your body has to work hard to digest those foods, and digestion could take up to 4 hours, okay? But when you're eating slider foods, like the biscuits and the crisps, there's very little for your body to digest and to process. So you can get it in. It just slides through, So that was a realisation. So I realised I could have stayed on 2.5, could have stayed on it, and I could have still lost weight. I could have gone right up to 15. But if I had that habit of having those slider foods, I'm still not going to lose weight. So that was a realisation, but at this point it already set me out 7.5. So I started on the 7.5, and again, on average, my weight loss results were pretty much the same. There wasn't anything extra anything dramatic about being on 7.5. I still got the same level of restriction as I did on 2.5 or on 5, exactly the same. The only thing I noticed being on 7.5 is this. When I was, I have my injection on Saturday, and Saturday, Sunday, Monday, my restriction was really strong. But by Tuesday, Wednesday, it was weakening. And then come Thursday, I found that my restriction, very, very little restriction. And then Friday, I had to really be careful not to overeat. And then I'd have inject again on Saturday. So essentially, really strong restriction for the first couple of days after taking the Mounjaro. But as the week went on, my restriction got less and less and less. And then again, I realised that actually was Mounjaro. And that was the effect of the Mounjaro weight loosening and weakening. But then I realised that I have to put in and maintain those habits all week. All week I have to, the same habits that I have on the Saturday when I've injected, I've got to work really hard to keep those habits going right through to Friday night. And there's a lot of anecdotal conversations out there. People saying as soon as they come off Mounjaro, the weight goes back on. And I'm thinking about it and I'm like, well, it'll be interesting to see because it's still in its infancy. So it'll be interesting to see what the research says. But in my mind, in my tiny little mind, I'm thinking, well, if you're expecting Mounjaro to do the work, then yes, the weight will go back on. So when you come off Mounjaro, you've still got to maintain those habits. So being on Mounjaro is a great opportunity to put in place and to practice healthy habits. Because if by Friday, inject on Saturday, it's really strong. If by Thursday, the need to eat comes back and I'm feeding that need, then yeah, I'm not going to lose weight. And so when I come off Mounjaro, I'm not going to be injecting, that restriction is going, then if I just give in to eating whatever I want, the portions that I want without putting any controls in, then yeah, the weight will go back on. So, I've always said as a coach and as somebody who uses Mounjaro is only a tool. It's just a tool. It's not a magic wand, and you've still got to work with it. And it's like when I was a Weight Watchers coach, people would sign up, they'd get on the app, they'd be looking at the app, looking at the recipes and everything, and then they'd say, well, I haven't lost any weight. I'm like, well, what are you doing? Are you following the program? Are you tracking your points? No, not doing that. Well, the program is only a tool. You've got to use it. You've got to use it. It's like signing up for a gym membership. It doesn't matter how many times you walk past the gym. If you're not going in there and using your membership, you're not going to get fitter or stronger. You've got to use it. And Mounjaro is just like that. You've got to work with it. So that was a key thing that I realised, is that it is just a tool. I've got to work with it. I've got to put healthy habits in place, and I've got to work to maintain those healthy habits. So what happened was I spoke to my doctor, had some bloods done a couple of months ago, spoke to my doctor, and my doctor was like, wow. She says, you are out of the diabetic range. She said, for the longest time, let me tell you guys, the longest time, my diabetes was so uncontrolled. It was the high points of high 40s into 50s. I just couldn't control it. And even though I'd lost a lot of weight, I just couldn't control it. I was on metformin, I was on pioglitazone, Phorexia or dapagliflozin. I was on like 3 medications for my diabetes. Couldn't control it. And then went on Mounjaro and had a check-in. It was probably around end of September. Yeah, so just about 11 months in, and she was like, wow. She says, you've done really, really well. She says, you're no longer in the diabetic range. So just for clarity, when you're a diabetic, you will always be a diabetic, always. However, when you control those diabetes levels, you're no longer at risk of those complications, but you're still classed as a type 2 diabetic. So she was like, you're at the lowest end, absolutely lowest end of normal. So well done. So oh my days, I was so, so, so happy. So I said to her, well, I've got, I'd like to lose maybe another stone, a stone and a half. Can I stay on Mounjaro to help with that? And she goes, yeah, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. You can stay on it for a little while longer. So last week it dawned on me, because I'd stopped taking all my other medication. So it dawned on me, I thought, I don't know if I'm right in stopping my metformin, pioglitazone and the dapagliflozin. So I called the doctor and asked the question, and they said the pharmacist will call you. Just got to have a sip of this lovely tea. So the pharmacist called me and we had a bit of a chat. And now this is so interesting. First of all, he said, well, the doctors say all sorts of things, but we need to have a look to see whether it's feasible or necessary to keep you on it. So he asked me how much weight I'd lost, and I told him, and I'll tell you in a minute. And I said, well, the whole point of calling is I want to know if I should still be taking, all the tablets. So he asked me when I'd stopped taking the tablets, and I told him. And he said, well, the fact that you've got your blood glucose level down to 40 and you've stopped taking your tablets for a while, clearly is an indication that you don't need those tablets. And I was like, thank goodness, because that's 3 tablets I can knock off my list. Honestly, guys, I was on a lot of medication. So 3 tablets I can just take off my list. Every month I'd have a big bag of drugs turning up at my door. I know, medication for all sorts of things. So now 3 more off my list. So I said, well, can I stay on the Mounjaro? So he said, and there were so many myths out there about Mounjaro. I'm just going to let you know what he told me, because I'm not a medical practitioner. So I'll tell you what he told me. He said Mounjaro was developed, or Tirzepatide was developed as a type 2 diabetic medication. It was developed to treat type 2 diabetics, the same way that Victoza, Bydureon and lots of other medications have been developed to treat type 2 diabetes, because in this country, in the West, it's an pandemic proportions. More and more people are being diagnosed with diabetes. We've got children being diagnosed with type 2. Type 1 diabetes is a totally different disease, but type 2 is lifestyle induced. So, and if you're going to develop type 2, it's usually around the age of 40, but now with people younger than that, even children are being diagnosed with it. And the NHS has got this massive programme around type 2 prevention, and they do the pre-diabetes prevention programmes. So people who are pre-diabetic, they put in a lot of support to prevent them from getting type 2 diabetes. So there's a huge amount of work going on. So that's why Mounjaro, tirzepatide, was developed for type 2 diabetics to reduce the risk, because it's costing the NHS a fortune every single year. And when they were doing their trials, they realised actually not only is it reducing type 2 diabetes, but people who are on the trial are losing significant amount of weight. And that's when, the world sort of took it over as a weight loss medication. It's not it is initially developed as a medication to treat type 2 diabetes. Now, I remember having this conversation with a Weight Watchers coach, and she tried to shout me down and say, no, it wasn't. It was developed as a weight loss medication. I said, no, it wasn't. It was developed to treat type 2 diabetes. And guys, go and do your own research, but that's what he told me, and that's what I understood from my research. That's what he reiterated. Developed to treat type 2 diabetes, and now the world is taking it over to lose weight. And as a result of that, the prices have gone sky high. So even if you are type 2 diabetic, you can't necessarily get it off on the NHS because it's so expensive. You have to meet a criteria of having, I think he said 3, you have to have either three linked conditions or 3 linked medications, in order for you to get it. But there's quite a strict criteria to get it. So you just can't be type 2 diabetic and expect to get it. No, they've made it harder. I know, crazy. So basically, the long and short of it is he really wanted me to come off it, because he said, well, you're not in the danger zone, you're at the lower end of normal. And he said, really, you shouldn't really be on it anymore, and certainly not for weight loss. He said, because your diabetes, is controlled. So he said, we're really going to have a conversation about where we go with this. So I said to him, so he asked how much weight I'd lost, and I told him, and I said, I would like. So he'd done all me, he worked out his percentages, and he said, I think he could say that I probably could, just for the health side of things, probably lose another stone, another 10, 14 pounds. So he then said, the way for, and then I said to him, if I'm going to come off it, I would like to do a step change down, so from 7.5 to 5 and then 2.5. And then he said, that's not how Mounjaro works. He said, you don't need to step down. He said, you can just come off it straight away. You don't need to, we step you up so your body gets used to it, but you don't need to step down. So he said, when you're ready, we can just take you straight off it. So he said, I think the best thing to do, he said, I'll let you stay on it for another couple of months, and then we'll do your bloods again, and then we'll see where your blood's at. He said, if your blood glucose levels are still at the lower end, is still around 40, if they're still well controlled, then we're going to have to talk about getting you off. He said, but if they've crept up, which is always a possibility, because just because you get them down low doesn't mean they stay low. It's a work in progress. You've got to keep working at, all of those healthy habits, to keep that blood glucose level low. He said, if they've crept up, then we can look at what we do, i.e. keeping you on it or putting you back on the tablet medication, etc. He said, so we'll just keep you on it for another 3 months, and then we'll do some bloods and then have a conversation there. So I'm like, do you know what? I'm happy with that, because it's never was my goal to be on Mounjaro long term, and my initial goal was for diabetes, and I've hit that goal. So really, really pleased with that, because you know, uncontrolled diabetes is serious. You know, it's a very popular, very common illness, disease, but it has some really, really serious side effects. And I've just written some down here for you guys, because, you know, now that I am back down in the normal range, which I'm over the moon with, I've actually, and this is, you know, this is my results. I'm sharing my results with you, and I'm going to come to my weight loss results in a moment. But I just want to drive home that because I was on Mounjaro for type 2 diabetes, this is my priority more so than the weight. So I've reduced the risk of complications, health complications, being on Mounjaro. I've reduced the risk of stroke, which runs in my family, and my father had a series of strokes leading up to his death, and it was a stroke that you know, ended his life. I've reduced my risk of heart disease, and due to my lupus, I suffer with my heart, and you know, so I have to manage my heart health. I've reduced the risk of limb amputations, and again, that runs in my family. So my dad's cousin, he had a leg amputated. Yeah, diabetes is very, very serious, guys. And also my grandmother lost a leg as well. I've reduced the risk of eye disease and vision loss. I've reduced the risk of nerve damage in like my fingers and my toes and my feet, and every year I still have to go for my checks, and they check for nerve damage in my feet as well. You know, the pinprick in your feet, they check all of that, checking between your toes and everything, because, you know, it can lead to some serious complications. I've reduced the risk of gum disease, fatty liver, and poor blood flow and poor circulation, although I do suffer with Raynaud's phenomenon, which is again related to my lupus, and I have that in my fingers and in my feet as well. I've reduced the risk of thyroid problems, reduced my risk of dementia, and reduced the risk of bone disease. So whilst I'm happy with my weight loss result, that list I'm blown away by. Mounjaro has helped me to reduce all of those risks. Wow. Honestly, I'm so happy. So happy. So I just feel so much better, and knowing that I've reduced all of those risks, I look at my day, I look at what I eat, I look at, you know, how I move very, very differently. It's massive. All thanks to Mounjaro. So yeah, if you are type 2 diabetic and you're thinking about going on Mounjaro for type 2 diabetes, definitely talk to your medical practitioners and do it. Forget the naysayers. I had a load of naysayers, even naysayers here on my channel that I had to block with their comments around why am I on Mounjaro. I'm on Mounjaro because of those things, reducing all of those risks. And diet alone and losing 9 stone wasn't making that difference. It wasn't helping it. It was helping it, but not as much as Mounjaro. So thank you, Mounjaro. And I'm so glad I didn't listen to the naysayers. So how much weight have I lost on Mounjaro? So altogether on Mounjaro, I've lost about 3.5 pounds. 3.5 pounds. 3 stone, 5 pounds is what I've lost on Mounjaro to date. So from October last year to December, 3.5 stone roughly. Again, really pleased with that. So that brings me to well over 12 stone. I lose track of the figures because, as you know, guys, my weight journey is so much more than the numbers. So I lost 9 stone before Mounjaro, 9, 10, 11, 12. So yeah, about 12.5 stone I've lost now, altogether on my weight loss journey. And 3 of that has been Mounjaro. I've come down from a tight 24, 26 in clothes, and I'm now, I'd say I'm a comfortable 12, 14, depending on the cut, the fabric, the style, and where I get it from. But yeah, comfortable 12, 14, 14 a push, but a comfortable 12. And yeah, feel amazing. I can get into all my old clothes, which is great. A lot of my existing clothes that I bought, you know, along my journey are just too big. They're falling off me. I've got a pair of joggers on today and I put them on and I'm like, I can't walk straight with these. I can't walk on the street. They're just like really massive in the bum, really baggy and really loose in the leg. So yeah, seeing all of that in my clothes. At night when I go to bed, my boobs isn't coming up to choke me because my boobs, although I've lost a lot of weight, I still have the girls. Sorry guys, but I still have the girls, and I'm still busty, and I will always be busty, and I love being busty. But I remember the days when I used to go to sleep at night, and I used to feel like I was being choked because my boobs used to come up and choke me in the middle of the night. I know. And like when I wanted to turn over, I'd literally have to move my boobs to be able to turn over. I know. But, you know, when you're carrying weight, you don't realise all these little things that affect you. So, yeah, you know, I feel amazing. I will put some pictures. I will just say my pictures are really old. And in the summer, I'm going to have, I'll probably treat myself to a photo shoot. And get some really nice pictures of where I'm at now. But as it is, these are all my old ones. The best ones are when I was on holiday recently. But yeah, you know, so yeah, you know, I'm really pleased. So thank you, Mounjaro. So guys, if you're thinking about doing Mounjaro and you've got medical supervision, whether that's through your GP, your consultant, your practice nurse, do it. Do it. You know, if it's right for you and they recommend it, do it. If you're thinking about it, doing it privately, definitely speak to your doctor first. And then if they can't fund it, then, you know, contact one of these places that offer it, you know, and do it that way. But even if you're doing it, funding it privately, I would always say, please speak to your doctor and get some bloods done to make sure there's nothing underlying that can impact you. So yeah, that's where I'm at. So what happened? So that's what we agreed. I'm going to continue on Mounjaro for another couple of months. I'm going to have some bloods done in about 3 months, see where I'm at, and then we can review. So that was how we left it. And then about an hour later, he called me back. The pharmacist called me and he said what he wants to do is put me back down to 5 milligrams because I've been on 7.5. He wants to put me down to 5 milligrams. He said because, and you know, this is why it's so important to get medical supervision and medical advice. He said because my blood glucose level is so low, like healthy low, right at the lower end of the scale, he said if I stay on 7.5, I run the risk of going into hypo. And I thought that's interesting. I hadn't even thought about that. He said your blood sugars can drop too low. So he said that's why he wants to move me back to 5. And I was like, let's go with it. Let's go with it. You know, I'm not going to insist on staying on 7.5 when there's no gain, you know, nothing to gain from it. But I put myself at risk. I was like, no, taking that medical advice. I've always taken the medical advice. When you have complicated health, you know, I've had to take medical advice because, you know, I do put, to some extent, some trust in my medical practitioners because, you know, I know my body and I know how I feel, but they know how to treat me for the better. And they've always supported me and it's always been right. So I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm listening to you. Put me on 5. And then he sent me out my next box of 5 milligrams. So yeah, so that's where I am, guys. That's where I am. So I will be coming off Mounjaro. So now I'm kind of thinking about, and this is a perfect time of year for me because I'm coming up to just taking some time to reflect. I've got the Christmas week off work, so I'll be taking some time just to reflect on my progress, on my life, on my goals, on things that I want to achieve next year. And within that, I look at my habits and my health and my wellness, things that's worked really well for me this year, things that I need to perhaps firmen up, things that I could put in place, new things. So in doing that, I'm going to be having a good review and overall of my habits and looking at what I can continue to do to continue losing that last stone, and also think about maintenance, think about what I need to do, what needs to happen for me to maintain my weight loss, because let me tell you, this weight ain't going back on. It is not going back on. No, it is not going back on. And yeah, not happening. So I need to really think about how I'm going to maintain my good habits. So I hope you'll stay with me on the journey, guys, and we can learn together. Yeah. So there we go, guys. That's it from me. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you got a few tips. I know I've learned quite a bit with having spoken to the pharmacist the other day, and yeah. So here is to the future. Guys, I'll see you in the very next video. Take care now. Bye.